I always wanted to make movies. I'm from Chicago. I made movies with all my friends growing up. And when I was 17, I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue it for real. And I always had very lofty aspirations about the movies I wanted to make. But I also was a man of two minds. And so I always wanted to make all kinds of movies. I wanted to make high art. I wanted to make high schlock. And so as I was pursuing my career when I first got started, I was game for and open to anything. And I got an opportunity to make a movie, which was my first movie, called Never on Tuesday, which was a teen comedy. And the two producers were Brad Wyman and Cassian Elwes. Okay, and that movie was a great opportunity to make my first film. And it had a great cast in it. I mean, Charlie Sheen did a cameo, and Nicolas Cage did a cameo, and a whole bunch of other popular actors at the time. And it was fun to do, and it turned out great. And Cassian, who'd been producing a lot of other movies at the time too, well, Brad as well, they'd been producing a lot of other movies, but Cassian had a source of funding for B movies. And I had this fantasy idea that I would create this director character that I could have as sort of a parallel career with. So as Adam Rifkin, I could make movies like Never on Tuesday and The Dark Backward, and at the same time, I could be Riff Coogan, and I could do all these grindhouse movies because the stakes are lower, and so it's more fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're making a movie, it's a very rare opportunity that you've been given, and a lot of money is at stake. And so it's stressful because you care so much about wanting it to turn out really well. But if you get a chance to do a low-budget grindhouse movie that has to be shot in a week and you're using a nom de plume, the stakes are different. So it can be more fun, and it can be more experimental, and it could just sort of be a more wild experience. And so I just kind of adopted this idea that I was going to be Adam Rifkin and I was going to be Riff Coogan. So Cassian got funding for our first Riff Coogan movie called The Invisible Maniac. It was made for very little money. We shot it in a week, and it turned a huge profit. So after I made The Invisible Maniac, I went on to make this movie I was very passionate about called The Dark Backward, which was a great opportunity, and I think it turned out well. But it was a very stressful opportunity because I wanted it so badly to turn out so well. Another opportunity was presenting itself, which was a chance to make a big action movie called The Chase with Charlie Sheen. So I had some time before The Chase was about to go into pre-production because Charlie, I think, was going off to do The Three Musketeers first for Disney. So there was a chunk of time before that movie was going to go. So I said to Cassian, let me do another Riff Coogan movie, A, because it's fun, but B, it's practice. When, as a director, do you ever get to practice and hone your skills? It's like you're thrown into the fire every time. It's not like you really get an opportunity to rehearse. So I wanted to be, because I'd never directed action before I was doing The Chase. So he said, you want to direct Psycho Cop 2? Because he had made a lot of money on Psycho Cop 1.
Well, I auditioned for the role, and the great thing that happened was the audition material was the Sam Shepard play True West, which I knew very well. I mean, I knew it cold. I'd been studying it in class. So I went to the director's house in the Fairfax district, and he said, we're doing scenes from True West to play Lee. True West was the play that made Malkovich and Gary Sinise famous. Later it was done on Broadway with Philip Hoffman and John C. Reilly switching the roles. I mean, it's a classic Sam Shepard play. And I was able to do the 20th anniversary out in Pasadena, so I actually got to put it on stage, which is an incredibly powerful piece. So I was delighted because I had an advantage over the other actors there because I knew the material and I had been working on it, which I didn't let on. But it was just, there was one little moment in the audition, sometimes this happens for actors, where you know, I just got this part. And it was just a little moment where I pretended to punch him. And I saw the light go on in Wallace Potts' eyes, and they made the offer shortly thereafter.
And so I met Bobby Ray, who was Psycho Cop from the first movie. Great guy.
Part one is set in the woods. It's much more of a Friday the 13th. It's kind of the characters are much more prototypical. Kenny, there's one girl who's lost her hairbrush. I mean, she worries the whole film about her hairbrush. And, they're not nearly as savvy as the yuppies in the high rise, who are looking to get laid and stoned and drunk. I mean, what more reason do you need to kill them?
Howdy, officer.
Dan Povenmire wrote the script for Returns.
I met Dan Povenmire at USC. I went to USC briefly. He went to USC. And we were both cartoonists for the USC newspaper, the Daily Trojan, there at the same time.
I got the gig because Cassian Elwes had produced several things of Adams, and I'd done storyboards for them, and I did like a T-shirt design for one, and I'd written a theme song for another. And he liked my stuff, and Adam said, "Oh, you should have Dan. You should read some of Dan's scripts." And I gave him a couple scripts to read, and he read them, and he said, "Oh, I really like these, but these are not the movie that I want to make."
I don't remember why I didn't write it, but I remember I suggested that Dan write it, and he jumped at the opportunity, and he wrote it really fast, really, really fast.
It needs to be something we could shoot in a week in less than 3 locations, or 3 or less locations, and it has to be made for this amount of money or something like that. And I started writing that the same week I started at The Simpsons. I'd been working on Ninja Turtles, and I'd been out of work for a while, and I got work drawing on The Simpsons, and so I was going to work every day and learning how to animate in a studio, and soaking all that in. Then I'd come home and I'd have dinner, and then I'd write till like 1 a.m, and then I'd wake up again at 9 or 8 or 9 and go into work. And I did that for 2 weeks. And so it was the first 2 weeks I was working on The Simpsons. I was writing Psycho Cop 2 at night.
It was great. I mean, it was funny, and it hit all the beats, the horror movie beats,
7th floor, going up. Linens, lingerie, eviscerated women.
He also created an iconic line: "You have the right to remain dead."
Anything you say can and will be considered extremely strange because you're dead. Thank you. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember that line. Thank you, Dan Povenmire.
We can only have 3 locations. I'll set it in an office building, and we can just, we'll find an office building with some empty floors, and we'll be able to shoot in an office building. It's going to be the same variation of 10 Little Indians that they've had for every slasher movie. I watched the first one in case I needed any information from that, and realized I did not need any information from that. There's no unanswered questions in the first one. And then I just went ahead and just wrote characters that I at least liked on the page.
Once you put a gun on your hip and a badge on your chest, you're a changed man. You walk the streets differently. You have the power of life and death in your hands. That appealed to me because I always, disliked those people.
Adultery is still illegal in a lot of states.
It's retribution. Even Friday the 13th, Jason always killed people after they had sex. It became this sort of staple of those slasher movies, where it's like they're dying because they did something bad. I don't know that was a conscious decision while I was writing it, but it was probably just informed by all the slasher movies I'd seen before. Well, I think I figured that he was a cop, so he however he would go crazy, it would be in an authoritarian way, like he would keep that in his insanity, and just like, okay, I'm going to start killing people, but I'm going to start killing people to keep everyone else safe, because that's sort of why people become a cop well, it's like half the people who become a cop. Some people think I want to wear the badge, I want to carry a gun, and the friends that I have that became police officers because they wanted to keep people safe and serve the public. And I think that back in his twisted brain somewhere, that's what it is. So he has to come up with reasons why these people deserve to die.
I originally signed a 5-picture deal for the film. So I was convinced that I was the next Freddy Krueger, right? I mean, 5 pictures, and they had insisted on it, and they had tiered the money and everything. So I remember getting that contract. It was for $1.2 million. I thought, I'm rich. I've done it. Okay, it's official. I've achieved it all now. Of course, it didn't work out that way. We made 2 of them, but both of them were fun to make. Well, there is a method. It's called the method. Stanislavski, I was a classically trained actor. I mean, I went to school with Meg Ryan and Michelle Pfeiffer and Sean Penn and Nick Cage and on and on. This was a very competitive class. She had, Peggy Fury was her name. She had been Lee Strasberg's right-hand girl in New York. So we came up in the tradition of theater. We're theater actors. And so building a character, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a craft. And I think that's been lost a lot. I noticed a lot of young actors I talked to. I did a movie with this kid. They keep giving this kid series. They keep failing. But he's a good-looking kid, right? But he has no technique, no game. I mean, he's surviving on charisma and charm and looks, and that's going to run out someday. Someday Anthony Hopkins is going to be standing there, and you better have some serious game, right? You better have a technique. You better have a method. So that's how I approached it. I mean, you build a character, then you execute it. Because you have to, it's like a baseball player, you have to keep repeating the swing, right? Or a golfer, you have to be able to repeat the swing. You can't play it crescendo the whole time, right? Any orchestra will tell you that. You've got to build up to it. I always felt like I wanted to be informed by Christopher Lee and Vincent Price and the Grand Masters. What they always brought to a part was what I like to call malevolent glee. Okay, I mean they relished the crimes, right? So that's what I wanted to get into Psycho Cop was malevolent glee.
Damn, that cop was weird.
Ryan, you really need to switch to a decaffeinated, buddy. He's just messing with us. If he wanted to bust us, he could have.
What do you mean?
Let's just start like 6 months before the Psycho Cop went into production. Psycho Cop 2 or Psycho Cop Returns went into production. I get a call from Rifkin. And I myself was I was 23 or whatever the hell I was, and a lot older now. And I get a call from him. I'm staying at my mom's. I'm post college, and I'm in a depressive, near suicidal state. I would even venture to say, staying with my mom, and Rifkin calls me, and he presents this role.
Can I call you back, please?
I went to high school with Miles Dougal, and we went to an arts high school in Chicago where we were both art students. There was theater students and dance students and music students, but we were art students. And my art of choice was film. I always wanted to make movies, so my art projects were always movies. And I would star Miles in all my high school movies. And he was hilarious. And so I always knew Miles would be really funny in real movies.
No. I was like, he was kind of telling me that this is what was going to happen. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. And like I said, I was in this strange, young adult state, depressive state, where I was trying to figure out what to do with myself and my life. And but yeah, I was into it. It sounded challenging.
And so I flew Miles out to LA to star in Psycho Cop 2. And he had no money and didn't have anywhere to live. He slept on my floor a little bit. I think he slept on Rod's floor a little bit. He lived on the beach a little bit after that. But he probably doesn't want me to talk about that. But anyway, he was super funny, and I've used him in all my movies since.
Yeah, so he had this little plan, and I was on board. And he actually gave me the choice whether I wanted to play Larry or Brian. Rod Schweitzer, of course, wound up playing Larry, and the Brian part seemed a little meatier, and I'm not sure why I chose it, but Brian, of course, lives.
Thanks, guys. As you were, you two. Have fun, huh? How I ended up in the film was I had done a film called The Invisible Maniac. Been cast by a guy by the name of Tony Marks. They did a couple movies. They did like Invisible Maniac, Bikini Island, I think was another one of those movies. And then Adam and I worked on it. Adam and I worked together. Adam had directed Invisible Maniac, and then he and I acted together in a film called Last Dance. And I hadn't seen him for a while, and I was driving down Sunset Boulevard one day, and I saw Adam. There he was. He was like, "Hey, rah, rah." You know, this is when you like see people in their car back on Sunset, you know, back in the '90s. So I saw, and he, you know, so he pulled over, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing this movie called Psycho Cop 2. Do you want to be in the movie?" I said, "Yeah, you kidding? Of course." Well, originally I was cast as the Mike character, which is Nick Valonga, the guy that gets thrown down the elevator shaft. And then I ended up getting the Larry character, which was like the lead, you know, one of the leads. And so it was great. That's kind of how I got involved in the film. Michael, my man, I believe you're in charge of refreshments for tonight's little get-together?
Funny, I don't recall being given that assignment. Let me check my files.
I had written a movie called Deadfall with Nick Cage and Charlie Sheen and James Coburn. And one of the producers on that was David Andrea. He produced Psycho Cop 2. And I already knew Bobby Ray. And I'd worked with Bobby Ray before. We did theater together. I think I might have directed him in something at that time. I ended up directing a bunch of stuff. We worked together a lot. And so I knew them both. So they both came to me and said, "We're doing the movie. We want you in it." So Adam kind of got... what's the word? I was pushed on Adam, let's put it that way. But I went in there and met him, and both of those guys said, "We really want Nick." And he was cool, and as it turned out, we hit it off great. I kind of felt bad for him because it was almost like Dave was saying, "You got to have Nick in." Bobby Ray's like, "You got to have Nick in." And Adam's just like, "I guess Nick's in then," you know. So he was cool about it, and that's how I got in the movie.
I auditioned, but I was also about to get married to the executive producer. But I actually auditioned, and it's actually harder to audition for somebody you know and love because you really have to prove yourself. That was my real name, Barbara Lee Alexander, because I was about to get married or had just gotten married, I can't even remember. And my real name was Barbara Lee Alexander. And then I married David Niven Jr. and became Barbara Niven. So it was the old thing, do I keep Barbara Lee Alexander, which, you know, I've been using for years in SAG, or go with the Niven name? And Niven is a lot better acting name. So we kept it.
What are you doing for lunch?
I thought I'd eat.
Ah, what a coincidence. Me too. Why don't we do it together?
Well, actually, Lawrence, I already have plans today. But, why don't you take Brian here? He does look lovely today, if I may be so bold. Excuse me, please.
Because of Bobby Ray playing it so big and the other characters playing it so big, which was required. So I feel like my character, Sharon, had to bring kind of the truth to it. And I think I brought the audience point of view and had to kind of downplay it in order to be the balance.
I was a dancer, you know. I had toured with Jane's Addiction, and I had toured with Ice-T, and I had done a lot of dance stuff. So for me, when they told me I'd be dancing in it, I was like, cool. So when I first moved to Hollywood, my agent said that your name sounds like a porn star, Melanie Good. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I started thinking and thinking and thinking. Like, I called myself Alexandria Lakewood. Alexandria Lakewood. That's only because I had a cat named Alex. So I thought Alexandria, and then I was driving on the 405 to an audition, and I saw the street Lakewood, like, Alexandria Lakewood, perfect. That lasted 2 movies, Die Watching and Psycho Cop 2, and then I did Playboy, where they printed Melanie Good and wrote the check to Alexandria Lakewood.
I'm here. Ding dong. Ding dong calling.
I was using Bobby Ray Schaefer as my stage name for Psycho Cop, and I thought, well, I'll just be Robert Schaefer of my other stuff. You know, because the agents would always go, "Oh, we don't want you to be Bobby Ray. That limits you. You know, everybody's going to think you're just from Texas." You know, so I thought, well, Bobby Ray would be separate. You know, so naive. You know, it was funny because when I ended up doing The Office, people were saying, you know how rare it is for a horror villain to end up on a network sitcom? It's rare. So they were like, well, what's with this Bobby Ray Robert thing? And I'm like, I don't know who I am. I'm Bob Vance. I'm Joe Vickers. I'm Dick Dixter. Who am I?
So I mean, basically, this was a low budget little B movie shot in 7 days or whatever it was. But I mean, you know, this is a straight up B movie. Rifkin, he has some chops. He has some artistic chops, and that, you know, and he leaves his imprint all over it. So it's an Adam Rifkin movie.
Yeah. Do you have cherry chapstick?
Adam is a very gifted cartoonist, and you kind of can't fake that. This is an extension of that.
I didn't realize that Adam was a cartoonist, so you have to quickly take a whole scenario and narrow it down into a certain thought or a certain, you know, representation of that. And you brought that in spades to the movie.
When I'm just acting, I want to serve that director. But being there was a lot of, he was open to creativity. So he said to me, you know, let's get what's on the page and then just do what you want. So we did takes where I just went off, you know, I just said stuff, and a lot of that made the movie.
You know, I think maybe I was kind of at a place as an actor, I was pretty inexperienced. I hadn't done that much stuff. I'd done a little theater.
Time to party, old farts. Let's go.
So I didn't really realize that this has got to be, this is funny, you know? I didn't really catch it. I tried to play it straight. So when it came out, that's what makes it funny.
Maybe I should check that number.
When you're an actor, no matter what role you have, you want to bring the truth to it. And especially when you're playing physical comedy or physical horror or in a physically violent situation, you don't have to really prepare as much. I mean, you have to be ready to bring the emotion, but then you just are in the moment. And as long as the camera's rolling, you just react. And let me tell you, Bobby Ray Vickers, number 666 with that badge, coming after you with his gun, with his axe, with his burnt face, and then that laugh of his, that was enough to bring reality to it. I just had to react to him, seriously.
You know, was condemned by the Fraternal Order of Police. They came out against it. How dare they? Well, yeah, they were upset. But, you know, Vickers isn't even a real cop, you know. He's just sort of masquerading as a cop, you know. He's not actually on a police force.
If you take that movie too seriously, it's off. But Adam brought so much humor. He's such a funny guy, and he's got a really crazy sense of humor. We were able to add elements like that, and it was a lot of fun.
I don't remember who said this, but it is true. Casting is the only choice you can't fix in the editing room, right? Anything else you can pretty much fix through post-production. You can re-edit things, you can cut things out, you can cut around things, you can put visual effects over things, but casting is key to making anything good or bad, you know? If you have a really, really great cast, really talented cast, even if they're in a movie that's not that good, the cast elevates it, you know? So I think we got lucky. We got a really good cast for this little B movie.
Oh yeah, I get shot in the head. It's all over the internet. Oh, you gotta see it. It's fantastic. Yeah, I don't. It was my first time that it ever happened, so I don't really remember much about it, except they told me look surprised, and I did. You're gonna play that little clip right now, right? Where I look surprised. It's really silly.
I went to the set. I met Julie Strain, who played one of the strippers in it, and she found out that I worked on The Simpsons, and she said, "Oh, that's so great. Can you draw a picture of me having sex with Bart Simpson?"
Julie had a picture of Bart Simpson behind, fucking her from behind. Like he drew it for her.
I drew this picture and gave it to her, and I ran into her and Kevin Eastman, her husband, who I had unwittingly been working for before. I'd done the Ninja Turtles before this, and Kevin Eastman co-created the Ninja Turtles. And I ran into them at like Universal Studios tour or something like that. I think it was Industry Night at Universal Studios. And she was like, "Oh, honey, this is Dan. He drew the picture of me with Bart Simpson." And he was like, "I love that picture."
There goes your overactive imagination again. You probably saw a pigeon.
A damn big pigeon.
It was a mutant ninja pigeon.
I believe that was me. It was a long time ago. I believe that was in the original script because I had just been working. I'd done so many storyboards for the Ninja Turtles at that point. And you know, when you work on something that's that prevalent in pop culture, it's hard to get away from work because, you know, I'd be drawing Ninja Turtles all day, and then I'd go out. If I went to the grocery store, the bookstore or something, people would be talking about Ninja Turtles, or they'd be on the shelves or anything like that. I didn't even realize when they shot that Julie was married to Kevin Eastman. I found out later that they were even connected. So it's fun to watch that, and that little laugh she does is obviously, you know, I think that it just sort of hits home for her.
We were just shooting all hours, you know. We shoot like a lot of nights. And we shot a little bit in the day. We shot there at the Burbank Mall that's all torn down now at this funky little diner. And I remember I was so hungover. I was like, oh my God, we came in to shoot that first scene, right? I don't know if it was the first day we had shot. It might have been. But I was just hung over to the max, and it was hot as hell in there. They had the grills going and everything, and all the lights, and the diner was about as big as, you know, it was like a box. And I had my shirt was so damn tight, my face was blowing up. I was just like, ugh, get me out of here, you know. But I was just smoldering in there. I remember that. It was hot as hell.
Wow, if that's not an example of inbreeding, I don't know what is.
While we were shooting the movie, we were shooting mostly nights. And usually when you shoot nights, you sleep during the day and you're then awake shooting at night. I was living in a little place that was being earthquake-proofed. Just happened to be being earthquake-proofed that week. So I'd shoot all night, and then when I'd come home, there were literally jackhammers in my living room, and I didn't get any sleep for days. Didn't sleep at night, didn't sleep during the day. And there was one moment on the set I remember pretty vividly. I was so exhausted that I was kind of dreaming with my eyes open. And I was sitting on a chair, and I was looking at the camera crew setting up this next shot. And they were all kind of working around the camera. And in my haze, my sleep-deprived haze, I hallucinated that the camera, and it was on a tripod, the camera was a bonfire, and all the crew members around the camera were goblins and demons dancing around the fire, and the set around me became like this dark forest. And I just remember staring at that, and it seemed really real. And then suddenly somebody put their hand on my shoulder, which immediately woke me up, and I leaped to my feet and I screamed, "Action!"
One of the great things that happened that I think contributed to make the film what it was, we were doing all nights out in Burbank. And so all you do when you're doing nights is you just live and sleep and eat the movie, right? There's no time for anything else. And on our way to work each night, we would stop at Photochem and watch the dailies. So that really contributed a great sense of teamwork to this production.
When you're making a super low budget movie and everybody's in it together and everybody's rolling up their sleeves and everybody's, you know, doing 10 different jobs on the movie, it feels like a high school play or something. It feels like a little family that kind of has come together to help each other out, and it makes it a lot of fun. And so this movie was the same vibe.
I had already cut another film for Adam Rifkin. I think I cut 2 films for Adam Rifkin before this. I cut The Dark Backward, which was the second film I'd ever edited, first one with Adam. And then we'd established a long-time working relationship that went on for 15 years or so. The second film was a little scene film called The Nut House. And if my memory serves me, this was the third film, although this wasn't an official third film with him because we were both working under pseudonyms at the time. I remember the assistants working with me who I'd roped in. They were sort of in a similar situation. They'd come from bigger pictures, but they needed some money that week, so they came in and they were looking at the dailies, and they came in to me and they said, "Are we working on porn?" And I assured them that they weren't. This movie has ended up being an enormous point of pride for me in a number of ways, but in this one way, that this movie I cut on film from first day of shooting to fine cut in 5 weeks. To cut a movie from beginning to fine cut in 5 weeks is pretty much unheard of. At least back in the day it was, with one editor. So just as far as mission accomplished goes, I'm very proud of it. It wasn't entirely easy to assemble that quickly because Adam's approach to film usually is he shoots a lot of footage. Now, given the amount of money we had, he wasn't able to shoot a lot of footage. But when you're flying around that quickly, things aren't necessarily constructed in a Hitchcock sort of storyboard fashion. You're getting what you're getting. And for example, the stag party scene has an enormous amount of footage and was actually one of the more difficult sequences I've ever had to assemble. So in the respect that I had a lot of choices within scenes, to say it's not easy is not correct. It's time consuming. I like to have choices, it just takes more time. As odd as this sounds, coming from Psycho Cop Returns was sort of a seminal moment in my career. And I won't bore you with all my editing philosophies about this, but the sequence was shot very much from what a lot of people refer to a principle of arabesque editing. So I cut out all of the various bits for each dancer and designed them in close shots, moving left to right, moving right to left, moving left to right, and medium shots, same thing, wide shots, same things, and cut that sequence entirely based on movement. And then strung it together with a track at the time, a rock track. We temp in music, and cut this thing together in a very, very rapid fashion, but without watching the edit. But when you see it to the original track, it's actually one of my most proud moments in editing. And it really and a lot of people saw that and actually saw this rough cut, and I think it actually elevated my career at that point in time, which is a strange beginning to the striptease sequence in Psycho Cop Returns being the stellar moment in your career. But as strange as that sound, I actually think that was the moment where I got it.
We did the Rodney King beating scene, right? That was current.
So I remember watching Rodney King happen. I'll never forget that.
Hey, leave her alone!
At the time, the Rodney King tape had surfaced. They'd had that whole trial, and those guys had gotten off scot-free. And I'd watched that entire trial because I was doing freelance art for a living, and I would just turn the TV on, and so I'd watched that entire trial, and I'd seen that video so many times. And then Adam did a great job of staging it.
We actually ended up shooting it twice. The first time we shot it, we couldn't use it. I don't know why, but we were downtown on Santa Fe Avenue, and Rifkin was peopling the scene with local residents, drunks, and I mean, just people who were around. He was trying to, people it up. And so there was one guy who actually had a baseball bat in the scene, and he was beating me with it. And I first noticed him because I could smell him. And so this guy could smell this alcohol, and I would look up, and he's filthy, and and he doesn't know to pull the punches. He's just wailing on me with his bat, a wiffle ball bat, but nonetheless. So I grabbed the bat and I yell at Rifkin, who is this? And he goes, he looks great, Bobby. We ended up not using that scene, and then we went out here in the valley to this strip club and shot the reenactment.
Well, I won't say that Adam is not a political filmmaker because Adam has a very broad body of work, and there are things that he's done that have political commentary in them. But it's sort of funny that maybe one of his broadest political statements is him as Riff Coogan rather than him as Adam Rifkin.
Get him
Well, I'm wondering now whether people even get it when they watch it. You would have to be like our age and have really seen that video a lot to get it. I think a lot of the younger people who discover this aren't even going to get that reference.
And that was the scene at approximately 2 a.m. this morning when a group of citizens coming to the aid of a woman in need unknowingly helped capture Officer Joe Vickers, former police officer who has since gone on to infamy as one of the Southland's most notorious serial killers.
When I was making this movie, I remember thinking about the documentary Hearts of Darkness, about the making of Apocalypse Now, and there's a scene in Hearts of Darkness where they're shooting the helicopter invasion, and you see Vittorio Storaro looking through the camera, and he says, after they do a take, he says to Coppola, the helicopters came in a little too high. We should do it again, And I thought to myself, throughout all these movies, the principle is the same on any movie. You've got a camera, you've got actors, you've got, in some instances, a little bit of time, but the principles are the same. You can make something good or you can make it bad. It's your choice. You can care or you cannot care. Now, I will tell you this, full disclosure, okay? When we were making Psycho Cop 2, we didn't think it was any good, right? That was kind of funny to us, that we were making this movie knowing that it was schlocky, that it was corny, that it was bad.
I said it before, and I'm gonna say it again. Let's get the hell out of here!
But in retrospect, it actually turned out better than we thought it was when we were making it. The worry that we had to make it good was not there. So it just kind of freed us to just have fun. At that time, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a real need for home video product. If it was 90 minutes long, if it was in color, and if it had boobs or blood, or preferably both, it would make money. Just because video stores were popular, home video rentals were popular, and the more product, the better.
I mean, we got killed by the distributors on this deal. Why they signed a deal with Southgate owned Maniac Cop. We were direct competition. They weren't thinking, hey, this puts 200-300 batters hitting 3 and 4. No, no, they wanted to bury us. So they actually sued each other over the artwork because of similarities. And I mean, it was still successful. I think originally we shipped 25,000 units, right? When VHS was $100 each.
Oh, I got a really bad feeling about this.
I don't know how the rated version of this film ever came together. I know nothing about that. I'm sure whoever did it was well-intentioned, was working under orders, but it was really disappointing to see when I saw the first cut, and this was the one that got out into the world, because this movie is about being over the top. To see it toned down like that was frankly a little heartbreaking. And as I recall, it was done rather badly on top of the mix, so the mix has some holes in it as a result. And so it's really exciting that it's actually, this is something that people ask me about. Well, how can we get this version of the film? And it's so cool that somebody's gone out and dug it out after all this time.
One of the things I learned is because he wanted it so fast, and I wanted to get it to him before he cooled on the idea of making this movie, he being Cassian. It forced me to write at a speed that I think really has helped me in TV. I don't have the luxury running a TV show to have writer's block. And that has helped so much in all the rest of my careers. I can always get myself to produce. And I think a lot of people especially who work just in features, take more time writing. There's a lot more procrastination allowed in features. And in TV, in features you rewrite it until it's perfect in your eyes. In TV, you rewrite it until it's Friday.
Well, I loved it. It's been good to me. I would have liked to have been the next Freddy Krueger, but I ended up being Bob Vance, and now I'm going to be Dick Dixter, and maybe I'll be Joe Vickers again. Who knows? Because one of your buddies has already threatened to finance it.
Police Officer Joe Vickers. At your service.
My salary's going up, though, I must say.
Making Psycho Cop 2, I just learned ways to move more efficiently, to shoot more quickly. You know, when you're shooting a movie in 8 days, you don't have time to screw things up, or if you do, that screw up just remains in the movie.
Up in the skyscraper where Rod is, I think, looking down the street, if I recall, and suddenly the shot sort of becomes slow when he's talking in a lower pitch.
Brian just has an overactive imagination. Some cop car parks behind us today as we're walking, right?
It's because some camera assistant accidentally switched the camera speed.
Now here's the difference between, though, a movie like Psycho Cop 2 and a different movie. On any other movie, I would have fired that person. On Psycho Cop 2, we couldn't afford to replace her, so she stayed on the movie.
But in the context of the film, again, the film is so wacky that it doesn't stand out to you as, hopefully it doesn't stand out to you as being something that's egregious.
You had a movie back then of talented people that became much bigger. For what was considered a little B, low-budget movie. Everyone was at the peak of their game there.
We moved fast, and I learned ways of moving faster for future movies. And I still apply some of the things that I've learned to movies that I make today, you know? I also learned you should have fun making every movie. Even if it's a movie that you care so much about that you're worried every day that it's, you're not doing your best on it. Making Psycho Cop 2 and making The Invisible Maniac were both so much fun. It taught me that you could take the pressure off yourself on bigger movies. Just trust your instincts. And so the two movies that I made under the Riff Coogan nom de plume were the most fun I had ever had making movies at that time. And I applied that sort of mindset in all my movies since.